It's an exciting meeting to have for us all. It's first meeting of what will be many, and I think a long road, but a super positive one for our industry. I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Rick Strell. I'm your current chapter president of the Northern Utah chapter of the NTMA. The NTMA is the National Tooling and Machining Association, so it's a national organization. We are the local trade association chapter for machine shops, comprised of private small business owners. We are, let me take you through. We were founded in 2007, fledgling a startup, and then we have rapidly grown over the last 3 years. We are now 26 members. I think in those 2.5 or 3 years, we've gained eight members. We are supported by a great cast of associate members, our suppliers, whether insurance, the oil providers. We have a great network of machine tool dealers that are supporting us with our chapter. We have 10 meetings annually. We take the summers off, and during the year we have some really great programming. Whether we have an informal roundtable that we'll be having next month, where we as shop owners will get together and basically just share issues that we're having, whether simplest to more detailed things. We'll basically just bounce ideas off of one another, or we'll bring in professionals from out of state. And these are what the associate member dues. Fun for us is to allow us to bring these speakers in and to have the program continue. I'd also like to introduce our board. Steve Van Orden with Paramount Machine, he's our current vice president. Travis Zollinger with Apex in Logan, he's our treasurer. Kyle Ellis with Blue Sun Manufacturing here in Ogden, he's our secretary. Reed Leland with Leanworks, he's a trustee. He oversees the robotics league, the development of the young kids in the high schools. And he's also involved on a national level. Brock Bryson with MSC, thank you, provides resources for us as a platinum member and also recruiting. Matt Worrell with JD Machine, he's also in a trustee position with the chapter, specifically over workforce development. He'll be speaking here shortly. Last but not least, Maggie Worrell, she's our chapter executive, and she makes this whole thing run. Wonderful job. Thank you.
Hey, Rick, maybe you want to mention Matt's role at National, too.
Oh,
you got, okay,
yeah,
sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. So I briefly touched on the why the trade association chapter, and again, I recall when I was first a member there was a question posed to me, why did you join? And I joined because of the networking. That was my initial reason for joining, and never realized the educational side and some of the discounts that were provided from being a member. Only later in my membership, I had a quote that came out of one of the roundtables suggesting that I had my insurance quoted, and I'd been fiercely loyal to a broker in Salt Lake forever and a day. I had it quoted, and I think they saved me close to 60% on my annual premiums. And so it's far and away saved me money just with my membership with the organization. So there's all the small little discounts that we get also. Staples memberships, get discounts with Grangers. There's some national programs that we can take advantage of.
MSC allows a discount for our chapter members.
Exactly, that's right.
Really nice incentive.
So our new charter, it really and the the struggles that we've had have been, the constant theme of workforce development. And that's why we're here today, and we'll get to the detail. I won't go on about that. I've touched briefly on what the national provides us also is some small legal representation. So if we have some HR issues, if you want to run a handbook by them, you see if you're compliant. It always seems like you get your handbook together, and no sooner do you look down, look away, it's outdated and something's surpassed you. But the national will provide you, I think, 12 to 14 hours of free legal assistance in the event of a potential challenge from an employee or situation. We have national advocacy with representation lobbying efforts both nationally and also on state level here. I mentioned the affinity programs with Staples and Granger and so forth, and I think there's something with some freight organizations as well. Huge one, we have an annual speaker come in, and he's a professional consultant, and he brings to us the opportunity to submit information on our businesses, which is confidential, for the operating cost and executive compensation, and also the wage and fringe reports. So we submit that information. If we get, I think it's 7 or 8 of our 26 members that we provide that information, goes to him anonymously. He puts all the information together, and then he gives us a profile for just our chapter. So we get wage and data information, operating costs, your material costs, your labor costs. These are invaluable pieces of information that I think if you're a standalone and you're just guessing, this is dangerous business. And to have those reports is super valuable. And again, at no cost to a member. Lastly, I mentioned the networking aspect. All of us have, I think, a maturity and understanding that there's a great deal of work out there. Not all of us do the same thing. We can't be everything to everyone. We all have unique services, and I think through this network opportunity, we bounce ideas by one another, and we understand each other's capabilities, and we ultimately ended up sharing work. I want to move on and introduce the speakers. Matt Laurel will be speaking next, and Helen McNally, she's the apprenticeship coordinator for our chapter. She's new with us, and Bob Kaus with the state. He is the apprentice coordinator on a federal level, but he'll speak to his position as well. So that's all I have. Thank you.
There we go. Well, thank you all for coming today. Sorry about the little hiccup with the technology, but hopefully it was a chance to prove the point that networking is a good thing, get together and talk to each other just a little bit. About 8 years ago, when I was approached to help start this chapter of the National Tooling and Machining Association, I thought, why do I want to sit down with my competitors, and what's the point? And as they got into this, they talked about networking, and I found that to be very, very helpful. Making friends and associates that I can call when I've got an issue, a common issue. We really have gotten to have some great tight bonds of friendship to support one another. The other side of it was the working together to solve our common issues. And workforce development is not just an issue for us here in Utah, but it is nationwide. I've gotten involved on the national level with the National Tooling and Machining Association, and everything we hear is our biggest issue as an industry is finding a skilled workforce. And fortunately, really, the stars have aligned for our association, in our state, in the industry of manufacturing, machining, and nationwide, that's provided us a really unique opportunity to work together to fix this problem. I don't know about you, but it's really something that keeps me up at night, wondering how, if we have opportunities come, how we're going to capitalize on those, because I can't find good people. How expensive is it really to hire someone that doesn't have the skills that we need, and potentially not the capability of learning those skills? It's really a huge issue for my company, and by virtue of your attendance here. I would imagine we're all sharing some of those same challenges. So we'll talk for just a minute about what is an apprenticeship. At JD Machine, I was approached in about 1998 by an employee who worked in a one-man shop owned by a German. And he says, I started an apprenticeship and I'd like to finish it. Do you think we could get that going? And he was one of my leads, and I said, hey, that sounds great, let's learn more about it. So at that point, we developed a training program that was structured, that had a mix of classroom training, and it was something that we had the flexibility to tailor to what JD Machine needed our people to know. And so we set that up, and we became certified by the U.S. Department of Labor in 1999. And as time has gone on, it's really improved. We've had our employees heavily involved in developing the program. I would say it's a worker-driven program. Our leads and our people on the floor are the people who really make this thing happen. And it's shown a commitment from our company to developing a workforce. And it has also, I think, in some ways helped us to be able to recruit people, because it is a little bit of a differentiator. It's not a differentiator that I wouldn't be thrilled for every shop in the state to have, because it shows that we're all working to develop our people. There's another neat component I'm going to talk about that can really help in identifying and bringing people into those apprenticeship programs. But it does show the company commitment, and also it helps in bringing people through the doors. We also, on an individual company level, have an opportunity to develop a wage schedule that you set, and it fosters a lot of fairness. It says if you have been here this long, and if you have these skills, and you can demonstrate those skills, then you can earn this pay increase. And it's all lined out there. One of my big motivations in starting an apprenticeship was people would come and say, hey, I need more money. And I'd say, okay, sure. Or depending on how I felt that day, no. But an apprenticeship really gives a structure to that pay system, and it takes away the pressure on the employer to say you're worth it or you're not. It takes the subjectivity out of it, makes it an objective thing. It takes a little bit of work to set that up, but we'll talk about how we're going to support that process. It's a widely recognized credential, and it's a stackable credential. It is issued by the U.S. Department of Labor. When I first got into it, I thought, isn't that a union deal? And there's unions do have apprenticeship, but in this case, there is no union affiliation whatsoever. It doesn't lead to a union. It doesn't support a union. It's completely independent. It's a credential that's recognized by the U.S. Department of Labor. There's certain criteria we're going to talk about that's required to set that up. But that credential is talked about in the bottom bullet here. It fills all but 25 hours in an associate's degree at Weber State. Now, we learned yesterday that Salt Lake Community College also has an associate's degree that can be then used to move on. But Weber State is offering that 25 humanities credit basically, and a person can get an associate's degree. And that's something that we're going to promote in our marketing too, because you're going to have moms out there saying, hey, I want my son or daughter to have a degree. Well, this does the lion's share of the work to get to a degree. So it's really exciting. Another point that I think is important to know is that if you have existing machinists that have been at it for a while, 75% of their experience can be grandfathered into towards a certificate. Okay, let's talk about ROI, because that's really what we're all about, right? We're mostly, well, there's a few not-for-profits here, but generally as employers, we're here for a return on investment. Now, we'll talk first about what your investment would be if you decide to get involved in this program. There's going to be some time and effort required to develop your training program. It can be very, very basic, probably almost to the tune of a one-page document that says you need to have this many hours in turning, this many hours in milling, safety, various components. At JD Machine, our apprenticeship has got to be fairly detailed, and that's because of a few different things that have happened, possibly because it's been around for a while. If we have a problem in the shop, and when we dive into the bottom of it as to the scrap of the job, and we determine the main problem is our people didn't know something, it's very easy for us to modify our apprenticeship and bake that into it. And all of a sudden, the corrective action that we provide to our customers, or more importantly, what we do inside of our company to eliminate the potential for future scrap, is baked right into the apprenticeship. We're in the middle of an ISO audit today. I'm happy to be here, by the way. Our fourth-year apprentices all have to do internal quality audits, so they become part of our audit team for that ISO registration. It's one of the coolest things to have you know, a machinist sitting in my office asking me questions about succession planning or risk management or whatever it may be, because all of a sudden they get this overview. So you can do things like that. It's completely up to you what you want your apprenticeship to look like. But it is something that as you determine needs that you have inside your company for your people to know certain things, it's a good way to make sure that happens and is sustained. We, as a group, as we put this thing together, and just a little bit of background, the NTMA applied for a state grant through the Utah Cluster Acceleration Partnership. And the state of Utah determined there is some areas that they really need to support. One of those was manufacturing, and our biggest issue, as we've talked to them, has been workforce development. So our chapter applied for this grant and wrote the grant with the help of some people here at Ogden Weaver and received that grant. In fact, we got some amazing feedback. The state is really excited about this process because things that they felt was important is stackable credentials, specifically apprenticeships, trade associations, and partnering with education, which this fills all those bills. So the state was really supportive of that. We're hoping that funding continues, but we're treating it as if it's a one-time shot. And we want to build this thing for sustainability. We want this thing to be around for a very long time. And the committee that's been put together is top-notch, and you'll see that as they speak today and as you become acquainted with them. But this is a long-term project. As you know, machinists don't get switched on or picked off a tree. It takes some time and effort to train them, and you can either train them through a structured program, or you can train them through them scrapping parts and getting upset and having a teaching moment then, or you can steal somebody else's person and somebody else can steal your person. I mean, these are all options. In my opinion, in my experience, homegrowing people through an apprenticeship is the most effective way to get good people, and it's also very effective in getting loyal people, people that want to be with you for the long haul. So because of that sustainability effort, and because I know in my own personal experience, when I put my money where my mouth is, we are assessing a fee for those that are involved in this process to make sure that we can continue the administrative support and the marketing campaign to long into the future. And I'll show you what that schedule is here in just a second. Another thing that we feel is very important to show our dedication to this and to the people is to help cover the cost of education. I don't know that this is absolutely required, but it's strongly encouraged that the employer help with the education costs. And I think Paul's going to talk a little bit about how the state can help with that as well. Here's the fee structure that we've set up. And just know that nothing's set in concrete. We've had this grant money and this thing switched on since the 1st of August. We'd love your involvement in the steering of the whole deal. We would, but this is kind of where we've set right now. Because the NTMA is, we feel is a pretty darn good investment, we want to incentivize that a little bit more. We'd love to have the opportunity to again, work together on mutual needs, but to help show, I guess, the financial justification for it. Here's the costs on the left side for the size shop, and this is independent of how many apprentices you want. If you want 10 apprentices, it's still the same rate, but this is the pay-to-play kind of a deal. And if you're a non-NTMA participant in this, the cost is on the right. What we determined is that whether or not you see the value of the NTMA, you're still an employer, we're still kind of in the same boat here in Utah working together, we want to open this up to everybody. And whoever wants to be involved can participate. Just as an incentive, because we are kind of under a crunch. We got to get everything launched, and the plan is to have this thing launched by spring of next year. That means the apprenticeships inside each company need to be developed, and our marketing campaign needs to be in full swing by early spring, so that we can start getting applicants placed as school gets out next year. So we're offering an incentive right now. If you'll commit before the end of this month, there's a 20% discount on the fees. Okay, here's the return. As I mentioned, there's a lot of support. We've got industry and U.S. Department of Labor support. Travis Minning, who's going to speak here in just a second, and Bob Kaus, who is our representative with the Bureau of Trade and Apprenticeship through the U.S. Department of Labor. He's here in Salt Lake and is able to help. So also, as we get together, we're going to do some webinars, and Travis will talk about that. So it's going to be a lot of support in developing your own individual apprenticeship. Now, that's a big deal, guys, because when we set ours up, we were conquering the blank page, and it was an expensive proposition. I really wish this kind of support was available when we set ours up. I think we had got a higher quality product faster if we'd have been able to bounce ideas off of other shops and have this kind of welcome support. I mentioned the marketing campaign. Helen McNally is chairing that. Helen is an employee of the chapter who is her job is to support a lot of these things. So you'll know a lot about Helen. She probably won't tell you this, but her maiden name is Grizzly. Jane Grizzly is her grandfather. Father. And so she has ties to the industry and a great education background in both as a teacher, because she's teaching classes now, but she also has done recruiting for students to enter the Art Institute in Utah. So she's like the perfect fit for what we need in running this thing. Paul Harbath from Lean Works is helping with the education support, and then I talked about Helen. But the marketing campaign is really, that's probably as big or bigger, probably as big as the individual training programs. We're going to canvass the state and try to get the best and brightest kids and someone who wants to change careers to enter these apprenticeships. And if you are involved, you'll get great applicants that have been pre-screened to come in and apply to your company. So bottom line, and just in conclusion, I think as we unite as employers of machinists through just in Utah, because we have unique opportunities, especially with the education, UCAT being here, and just the proximity of the shops around here. As we unite and let the public know that there are great jobs here, young people that can enter an amazing trade that is, you know, it's challenging, it can be stable. There's just so many good parts of that trade that people just don't know about. So this marketing campaign, the whole idea is to change the hearts and minds of the public and let them know what machining is. We're going to have open houses. We're going to have, we're going to be at fairs, job fairs in the high schools. There's so many ways we're going to reach out and let the public know that we're here, that we have good jobs. And once we get those interested parties, then they'll be directed to your companies, and you'll have a structure that will help bring them up and help make them the most effective and well-trained workforce that we could ever hope for. So that's all I have today. We're going to have a Q&A at the end, so we'll keep going, and those questions we haven't answered, we'll jump up and take those at the end. So, Bob.
As Matt said, I'm Bob Kaus. I'm the State Director for the United States Department of Labor. For the Office of Apprenticeship, we are no longer the Bureau of Apprenticeship and Training. They've changed us to an office, which means they can pay us less. As a bureau, they had to pay more. So there is some basic requirements for apprenticeship program. Must have what you're going through, you have to have somebody that's going to be in charge of the program. There's some things that is going to be talked about a little bit later for some of the other requirements. The training committee is not necessarily a requirement. It's recommended because it actually helps. It's inside your individual companies. Having a training committee sit down and actually go over the apprentices and go over whether or not they're actually getting through and meeting the requirements of the program. The training committee and actually talking amongst yourselves in the company is actually recommended. It's not necessarily a requirement. There is record keeping. We are a government agency, and so for being a registered apprenticeship and in order to get the certificate from the Department of Labor, there is some record keeping going on there. And obviously a little bit later when people start talking about any kind of state funding that comes along with that, all the record keeping that is required for apprenticeship program will also meet all the requirements for any kind of state programs. We actually work very well with them. Your key partners, obviously, you're all here for this meeting, you're on here. For the machining, it is a minimum. Department of Labor actually sets up what the requirements are for what a training program is. What they do is they send out actually surveys across country to shops that are doing this, and what comes back from all the surveys, they determine that for a machinist, 8,000 hours of on-the-job training is a minimum. To actually have a well-trained, what we call a journey worker or mentor level. So there is a recommended minimum of 144 hours of classroom time. We're not talking about credit hours in community college or through the ATCs. It's actual classroom sitting time. The basic theory behind that is you go to school and you learn the theory of how to actually do something, and then you actually go to work the next day and somebody actually teaches you to put it into practice on what you learned in the classroom. So that's the actual classroom time. 1 credit hour is typically in a community college or ATC is anywhere from 15 to 16 classroom hours. So it's actually in the classroom when you're sitting down, not for a credit hour. The apprentices must apply. Part of that is with the record keeping, with the application process, through a set of standards, which once you get into the process, we'll go through a little later, I think probably in this program too. We'll talk about a set of standards that's set up. There's a set of minimum requirements that are set up for a program. So any of the applicants have to meet that minimum set of requirements to get into the apprenticeship program. If they don't meet it, then their application is not accepted. So that's one of the things that you'll have to determine on what your actual minimum requirements are going to be. And the age requirements. To get into an apprenticeship program, federal requirements is 16, depending on any state laws for hazardous job applications. So typically for anything that is considered hazardous in the state of Utah is 18. So I believe, and there is in the labor law for the state of Utah, if you are in a registered apprenticeship program, that it's actually waived to 16, but I believe for Michigan it's still 18. So that would be up to you to determine. Most of the time it's going to be 18. The employers, whoever the sponsor is for the program, is determined to set up the wage progression. That's set up ahead of time in a set of standards. When we set up your standards, we ask for what you consider a journey worker wage. And if you have a range, say anywhere from $15 to $30 for what you would pay a journey worker, we set it and base it on the $15. We as Department of Labor and our sister agencies in Department of Labor, like Wage and Hour, EEOC, are never going to complain if you pay more than what you state in the document. But if you pay less, then you're in trouble. So we always base it at the lowest wage, what you would hire somebody off the street as a beginning journey worker. That's what your wage progression is. Typically set up in a percentage. Most programs set it up, and they typically, first year apprentice starts out typically on national average at 50% of what the journey worker wage is. And then most of the time, the wage progression is set up on a percentage, and it's based typically on 6 months, because you can actually put in your standards that they have to pass their 1 semester of classroom time, and they have to have 1,000 hours of on-the-job training before they can get their next raise. That's actually put in a set of standards, so when an apprentice actually applies for the program, he can get a copy of that standards, and he knows from day one, and you know from day one, what that apprentice needs to do to get his next raise. So if he's not meeting his requirements, he knows ahead of time, hey, I didn't do my classes, I didn't pass the classes, I haven't got 1,000 hours, I'm not scheduled for a raise. So that's all built into the set of standards, and it's set up ahead of time. And that's actually my little blurb on there. We will be working closely. Part of the thing is, one of the things you'll find with us, with Department of Labor, with the Office of Apprenticeship, we are free. I'm free technical assistance, so anytime, we have programs that actually have me on speed dial, call anytime. If you ever need help with your program when it's being set up, we're there for help. It's either, if I'm not in the office, my ATR, Pat Miller, we're both based in Salt Lake City. But we're free, and one of the things is if you have a registered apprenticeship program and it's structured, and all the things are written down, typically 9 times out of 10, if you get a call from Wage and Hour or EEOC and they find you have a registered apprenticeship program, they know you're already keeping the records, and they already know with us. When Wage and Hour comes in and does an investigation for your shop, they're typically not free. When EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity, comes in, they're typically not free. They have fines. So one of our jobs as the sister agency is to keep them away from you. So, Travis.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Bob. My name is Travis Minnie, and I want to talk a little bit about the apprenticeship template and some of the training and stuff we're going to do. But first of all, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I have my own personal story I'd like to share. This is my journey level certificate from the Department of Labor. I received it in 2005, and definitely one of my prouder moments. I got this apprenticeship under the sponsorship of J Machine. Thank you very much. I'm happy to say I was one of their earlier journeymen as well. In 1995, I was leaving my junior year of high school, and that summer I started at Ogden Weaver ATC as a student in their machining program. And I went all summer long, 40 hours a week, 30 hours a week, whatever. But I was pretty dead set that I wanted to do something with my life, and I really didn't see myself as college bound, to be honest with you. Throughout my senior year, I carried on the program. I graduated high school in 1996, and by the end of June of that same year, 1996, I had graduated the ATC certificate program and had my first machining job, and I've been doing that ever since. I've learned a lot of things, worked with a lot of people. Since then, I have worked as an application engineer for a company. Many of you may recognize me, I recognize many of you. And I've also recently, in the last couple of years, started my own machine shop. So the skills development within the apprenticeship program is great. And like Matt said, the loyalty to an employer, I worked very hard for Matt. He took very good care of me, and I appreciate that relationship that we had and still have today. The other thing I'd like to mention is Jeff Fowler at Ogden Weaver ATC was my very first mentor. He had also done an apprenticeship program. He was also a journeyman machinist, and he backed that 100%. You know, all the time he was always talking about how much value the apprenticeship program would have. He saw back then, he saw the situation we were working towards where we are today, where there was no skilled labor and nobody to help fill our shops with the people that we need to take care of, you know, our day-to-day operations. And I can't tell you how many times throughout that year that I was in school that he would talk about, you know, Utah needed to put together something for an apprenticeship program, how much value that would bring to the manufacturing economy. Moving on, part of my responsibilities are going to be doing some monthly webinars. These webinars are for you as employers to help you put together and establish your own apprenticeship programs. So we're not trying to put together a blank slate thing that everybody has to do. You guys can kind of cater this and tailor it to what you want, and I will act as a, you know, a counselor, if you will, help provide some guidance on things that you should think about and consider, and we can help with Helen as well. We'll help you submit that documentation and meet the requirements for the Department of Labor and all the rest, and get all that up and running for you. So kind of a consulting service, and then there will be ongoing support as well. So your programs are going to, as Matt said, they're going to evolve, they're going to change, you're going to find improvements, you're going to find things that you want to add to it or take away from it, and we'll be there to continue to help you submitting the new applications, documentation, everything else. Make sure you're meeting the requirements if you want to change things to fit your companies. This slide is just kind of a sample of what an apprenticeship outline could look like. It is very basic. It can be very basic. It can be just as simple as this. You can simply say, I need, you know, so many hours on this machine and the competencies required. Could be, you know, you need to be proficient at setup and operating, or you need to be proficient at programming certain machines or whatever. Again, we will help guide you through this. This is a very stripped down sample. It can be very definitive, and you can line out every single competency you want about whether or not they can use a height stand, or whether or not they can touch off a tool on a leg. We can make it as detail-oriented or as basic as you would like. But just know that we are there to help you decide, help you choose what program works best for you, and help you get through that process. And it is a big process, it is a daunting process, or can be, but we've got a little bit of experience in it. Helped with this before, I've been a part of it before, and also very importantly to state, I have a full set of resources behind me, so it'll never be just me. There are other employers that have offered to help, other journey level people that I know, and NTMA, of course, the chapter. So I'm not without resources either. If we get into something where we need help, we can get it taken care of. We'll pull our resources and our networks and make sure that it's all good. One thing I want to note along with this outline is safety, housekeeping, your general requirements of employees being on time and lunch breaks and, you know, how they present themselves to the world or whatever while they're under your employ. All that can be included with your Department of Labor agreements, right? So when you set up your contract agreement for an apprentice, excuse me, that is all part of that application that the apprentice goes through, and that's all something that you can lean on. You know, they're a journeyman, they're in training journeyman, they're an apprentice for you, and they are expected to be a good employee for you as well. So you can lean on those things as part of the program. These hours are done concurrently, but they are tracked independently. So you could have a gentleman or a machinist working on a CNC mill one day. He spends 8 hours on the machine, that's the hours that he's going to log. But he also spends some time doing some in-process inspection and deburring and whatever else. So in order to make sure that those apprentices obtain all their hours, they may only document 6 hours on the machine center, and they might document another 2 hours in quality control or whatever. And we can go over that some more in webinars for sure. But just so that you're aware as employers, just because they stood in front of a machine all day for 8 hours doesn't mean that they aren't building hours into other things. If you need deburring work and things like that, and other things that these employees are doing, those hours can still be applied towards their apprenticeship. And I think that's it. The only other comment I had that I was going to make was that experienced employees will be grandfathered in 75%. That's already touched on, but that's an important thing for people that you know, been in the trade for a while, may still want to participate. So next is Paul Harbat from Leaders.
Hi, everybody. My name is Paul Harbath. I'm with Leanworks. I've been with Lee for about 3 years, and I guess I kind of wanted to piggyback on something that they've been talking about. Since I've been there, even before I've been there at Leanworks, Reed has been working on an apprenticeship program. A lot of hours, a lot of time and effort to get a good, solid program, and it's a pretty good, solid program up and in place. You have the option, using Travis and all that you've heard so far, you have the option of being able to get up to speed pretty quickly with some pretty sophisticated stuff if that's what you'd like to do, or the minimum requirements. One of the other things that hasn't been mentioned, and we've had this happen a couple of times, we typically show customers when they come through a walkthrough audits or whatever, you know, just walk through customer orientation first time they get in. We typically show them our apprenticeship program that we have, and they're really impressed. It definitely is one more notch in terms of making us look good, and I think Matt referred to it as differentiators. Right, one more thing. So potentially that could be something that could be impact for you as well. My role in this is actually very simple. My role is, you heard from both Bob and Travis about classroom hours, hours that you would normally get maybe through someplace like right here at the ATC. My role is I'm the one that's going to coordinate with Brent and with the partners that potentially would be the people that would support you in terms of being able to do the classroom part of the apprenticeship. So you send someone here. One of the questions you may have is, well, what program do I take here at OWATC, or I'm up in Logan, what program do I take up there? That's my role, and my vision is I'll be able to give you a piece of paper, and that piece of paper will tell you, here's where you go for your region, here's where you go, here's what you ask about as far as here's what would be expected that would meet the requirements of the grant and the Department of Labor and whoever else would meet all those requirements, so you know exactly what you need to do. When you have this potential employee that comes through the marketing program, and yeah, that looks pretty good, do an interview, I think sounds good, what do you tell them to do? Well, first thing is classroom. will help with that. We'll help connect you with the partners that would do that. Now, there's obviously, we're all familiar with the partners like Brent here. There's DATC up in the Logan area, DATC down in north of Salt Lake, in the Layton area, and then of course Salt Lake Community College, Mountain Land down south. We'll do the work for you so you don't have to do that work. That's really what my role is. Second part of my role, also a note there at the bottom, it is possible to do something online if needed. There is a possibility of doing that. NTMA has a program that would qualify for this. You know, again, we'll have to figure out exactly what part of that program, but that will be my role. I should be able to give you this piece of paper and say, here you go, here's how it works. So we talked about the 144 hours per year. Typically that's going to be done somewhere like here. So we'll help you figure out what that is. Then the other possibility in terms of partners that may want to work with you on this is custom fit. And I'm not sure if you're all familiar with custom fit. If you aren't, go talk to Dan. Right? That's what, it's a state program right now. Yeah?
It's a statewide program. And my region is here in Weaver County. Chief Fowler is here, Chief Davis, and can I just like throw out a custom fit thing here?
Yeah.
Okay, Custom Fit is a statewide program, and there are funds available for businesses to use to help pay for training, the training that you're doing for your current workforce. And we work with a lot of employers here in Weaver County and with Davis as well to put people, employees through the apprentice programs. And at Weaver, we will pay 35% of the cost of that. So, like Paul says, if you have any questions about Custom Fit, it's really simple. There's very little red tape to putting it together. You call us up, and I'm not speaking for Jean, I hope, but you call us up and say, we're going to put Joe through the apprentice, the machine apprenticeship program. We send you an agreement, you sign it, you send Joe in to be enrolled, and it's that simple. We've worked with a lot of you in here right now, and I think that you can tell others how simple it really is. And there really isn't any kind of, you don't have to do anything like go and meet with administrators and tell your story about why you need this funding. It's just, this funding is for employers to help your company grow, be more marketable, and be more competitive, and grow your employees.
We've used it for years. Dana's helped us for our apprentices, and it's what she said, and it's a really great way to help offset costs. Good stuff.
And so the $3,500 cost you were talking about, that's the potential cost that could get offset.
Yeah,
Yes.
35% of the
Offset.
whatever it is. Well, again, you know, what my role is going to be is get these connections for you, so you'll have Dan's phone number if you're here, you'll have Jean's phone number if you're down there, you'll have, I can't think of his name.
Sterling.
Sterling, yeah, Sterling's if you're up below it, you know, that kind of thing. So we'll get all that information together for you, and that's really what my role is in all this. So I think next, Bella?
Okay, so I'm Helen McNally, and I am the Apprenticeship Program Administrator, and like Matt said, I've been brought in to help. I'm going to be wearing a few hats, and so I wanted to tell you a little bit about the roles that I'm going to be doing here in regards to this, new program and the launch of this program. A little bit of background on myself. Again, I am an educator. I've been an educator for over 12 years, and I've taught high school, and I've taught junior high school. I know. They're the best. So it takes the right type of person. So with that also being said, I've also been a high school recruiter for a college, and so I know that industry really well. And then on a personal level, and why I'm actually connected to the industry itself, is my family has been, in this industry for many generations here locally in Utah. And so for me, when I saw this opportunity come my way, it just seemed like a very natural fit for me, and I've just kind of always been connected to this industry. So looking at my role and kind of what I wanted to impress upon you is the first thing that I'm going to be doing is my job is to help you. I'm going to be assisting you in the best way that I know how and to work really hard because I believe in this program. And I know that the workforce is something that is dwindling and we need to revitalize it, and I'm here every step of the way to help you do that. In doing that, we are partnering, obviously, with the U.S. Department of Labor in developing and implementing the approved apprenticeships. So there are things that we have to comply with and we have to do, and I'm here to make sure that together we get those done and that it's successful. I'm also here to help maintain and organize and file the application information for those apprentices. And just kind of be there as, you know, some assistance to help you with your program. I'm also going to be a part of the reviewing of the applicants and basically to make sure that we're fitting the needs of your kind of customized apprenticeships. And then lastly, one of the biggest parts of the role currently, so kind of managing everything is going to come more towards the spring, but we're talking about right now. And so for right now, what I am doing is I am taking this very, very amazing money, and we are going to put it to the best use. And we are going to take it and make this campaign huge. And we are basically bringing in and outsourcing our marketing company that we're bringing in to help us do this. And so in that, it's going to be a full service marketing campaign, which is going to include the website. That's going to be a huge component. And right now we're kind of working out the website and how we want it to look, and we're doing a lot of research on who we're going to be targeting in terms of, you know, using these funds in the best way to be able to bring in good people, solid people for your companies. And so overall development, advertising of this campaign is really the big focus at this moment. So the website is already there. It's just under construction because we're starting to kind of gear up for a big launch, basically. And so this is where potential apprentices are going to go to apply for the companies. And then from there, once the potential apprentice applies or inquires, there's going to be a pre-screening and a qualifying of these applicants. And those things will kind of be determined on how we're qualifying and who you would like to be bringing onto your company. And then we'll be also kind of working to individualize the apprenticeship program needs. So in terms of kind of looking at, and I'm just going to kind of refer over here to my notes real quick to make sure that I don't miss any points. The target audience that we are looking at is around the ages of 16 to 25. That does not exclude people over the age of 25. It just means that is the target audience, kind of the younger generation, as you will. And so the other audience is going to be someone who's probably already entered the workforce and is looking for a job change or a second career. And those are obviously great potentials as well. So in regards to that campaign, we also have, with that target audience being in that age demographic, we also really want to connect with educators and with parents. And we kind of talked a little bit about earlier the education part of that, and someone had mentioned, you know, parents oftentimes a prospective apprentice. You also, at the age of, you know, college, going into college right out of high school, we may have to market to their parents as well. We have to maybe sell that this is a very viable and valuable industry, and here's why. And some of those, degrees that may be options are definitely something that we want to use to market to our audiences. A couple of the other things I wanted to make sure to touch on is how we're going to use that grant money. Not only the website, but you guys know that we are living in a tech world, and if we're marketing to 16 to 25, we better be on social media. So we're working with those agencies. When I say full service, those are the types of things. We're looking at all sorts of creative ways to use advertising, whether that is radio, whether that is transit, on buses or billboards, anything that we can do to try and capture the attention of our target audience. But one of the other things that I, from my experience as a high school recruiter, that I just found to be very valuable and very successful was a strong presence in the high school outreach programs. And really, that 16, 17, 18 of going into the high schools, getting in front of students, meeting with teachers, meeting with, all sorts of educators, administrators, counselors, any director, or anyone who's in charge of any of the CTE programs. We would love to build some partnerships with them. And also, we've been working and talking and having meetings with different educational options like Paul had mentioned, and we've just had a really positive response from everyone so far. And so I think it's going to be a really great fit, and we're really excited about it. And launching in the spring, we're hoping to just kind of get all the marketing going and kind of hit the ground running for this program. So it's big. It's going to be really big, and we really love everyone to be a part of it, because this is something to get behind. So the other last couple things is just the open houses, and I know Matt had mentioned that, but that was just one other idea that we had in terms of kind of coming together and letting people come in from the public, or anyone that's obviously seen the marketing campaign, to invite them in, and just kind of educate the public about this industry, give them more information, and direct them to the website where they could potentially apply or become a potential apprentice. I did want to let you know before we open it up to questions is that everything that you've seen today, and we actually have filmed a presentation, is going to be available to you. We will be emailing this out to you so that you can review it. Was there anything else that the board wanted to mention before we I think we're all just going to come on up, and if you have specific questions to direct at anyone, feel free. And thanks you guys for your time, we really appreciate it. And thanks for being really patient with our technical difficulties. So thanks, appreciate it.
One question I thought you might have is, do you have to have all your entire workforce, all your machines to the apprenticeship? And the answer is no. It can be designated to those who have interest, those that apply, that are selected. Yeah. Oh, you're in film. Oh, I'm on film. Okay.
That's right. Anyway, correct me if I'm wrong, but not every employee and every machinist has to be in an apprenticeship. They can pick and choose. You can handle things the way you have, and just have a couple of apprentices. For new people, it's amazing how much flexibility there is to the program. So, other questions?
Yeah, the guys I have working for me now have completed the program at greater than they got their certificates. So where would they start?
Who wants to take that?
This is an 8,000-hour program. In our data system, you can grandfather them into the system for 7,000 hours. They have to be in our system for at least 1,000 hours. And it's not that they need the extra 1,000 hours, it's just that our IT people in our system will not let me go in and get the complete level until I'm in for 1,000 hours. So when the program's just initially starting like this, typically within the 6 months to a year time for a new program, we will do the grandfathering. So if you actually do the registration and put that in our system once you read the program, we'll actually, at 7,000 hours, you can actually go in there and actually complete them, and then we'll actually get a Department of Labor certificate.
So they won't have to continue in school or?
Yeah, from the education standpoint, what we've done in ours is with Ogden Weaver, we consider the level 1 certificate the education requirement for our system. So, you know, to get the certificate, you know, you gotta, those guys, as far as hours go, would have to work in this additional 1,000, 2,000 hours. But from an education standpoint, they could use the certificate. If you decide that your program's going to recognize a certificate from BATC, they got it done. They wouldn't have to do anything more.
Matt, just for the video for a second, could you read the question so everybody can hear the question?
Yeah, I'll do that. But it's something else.
Let's don't have handy. It's the apprenticeship program. Is there different rates within that apprenticeship program? I guess my real question is, when you're talking to people, if they serve their apprenticeship, is there follow-on to like a journeyman, tool and die maker? Is there programs that they might not be available here, but they can go somewhere?
Okay, the question is, if I understand correctly, is, you know, is there different levels to a journeyman program, maybe something about that? Is that the question?
Yeah, is there a progression past the apprenticeship
Progression past
program
it.
versus all of a sudden?
For what we've done, the apprenticeship is the 8,000 hours. We actually have a pay system above that, which is for higher journeyman level, be a master machinist, but we don't have that certified. We just have the apprenticeship, the 8,000 hour apprenticeship certified. Travis?
One other thing that could be included in that statement is every apprentice has to have a mentor. So you could actually create within your company a mentoring program, whereas these people become journeymen, they can become mentors as well to help additional apprentices coming up through the program.
Well, did you say you had a journeyman certificate?
Yes, the journeyman certificate. The journeyman certificate is what you get at the end of your 8,000 hours in your schooling. So after you've done work all the way through the apprenticeship and you complete it, that's when the certification is given.
There is other occupations actually. This is just one occupation. There's over 1,000 different occupations that are apprenticeable. You can actually, once they complete the machinist part, because that's what their certificate would say, tool and die is actually another section on there. And you could actually start a tool and die apprenticeship program, and actually if there's stuff that overlaps, you could use the credit from the previous experience in the machining program to go towards the tool and die program. The stuff that would overlap as far as with the work processes and the on-the-job training.
So it's fair to say this program is all-inclusive then. You can find what you want to be in this one administration.
Well, the one you're looking at starting right now is just for the machinist program. So, but there is other occupations. If you on our website, there's over 1,000 different occupations that are. You can actually register an apprenticeship program for a maintenance person in your shop. Maintenance repair is an apprenticeable occupation. Electricians.
We're working on one right now for welders, but there's so much flexibility that it can be what you want. But as far as it being, you know, above and beyond the machinist, like I've heard master machinist before, some of these other that are above and beyond. I think it can be done, but it would be up to you to do that. We're just supporting the machinist that from entry level to a journey level machinist.
That next stage would, after you're done here, just give me a call. We'll set you up.
Other questions?
I just wasn't clear, does this culminate in your journeyman certificate, or are you just simply in an apprenticeship program?
Yeah, the question is, does it culminate with a journeyman certificate, or is it just an apprenticeship program? No, the idea is that they will come out with one of these, with a number on it, and it's, you know, many people consider this equivalent to a 4-year degree, because it is, it's 4 years. And so it's a credential people can hang on to. And again, part of our marketing campaign is we're going to let moms know that their son or daughter could then use that to very quickly get an associate's degree.
That's my second part of that is, the curriculum is determined, or is
For education.
the journeyman certificate? The curriculum or standards are
This curriculum and the standards, we have a base level of standards from the Department of Labor, which you talked about during this slide. Everything beyond that is up to you as the employer. And so that's where I step in to help you determine what your program will be and what competencies are required, testing, whatever you want, to make sure that when your apprentice reaches that journeyman level, that you're ready to give you that certificate, that you've trained what you want into that individual.
But the basic standards are federal standards.
Yes.
Yes, there's 22 points under the Code of Federal
Those are
Regulations.
covered between here, Florida, coast to coast, those will be the same journeyman.
Yes.
Well, the education that we get here is, what we would look at when we're going to give a certificate from the Department of Labor is we want it to be an industry standard. So they should be able to go anywhere in the country. But it does no good to do an industry standard if it's not company specific. Because I could say that you need to do, and I can't talk about tool and die and machining. I'm an electrician by trade. I can talk like switchgear. I can say you need to do 1,000 hours in switchgear, but if your company doesn't do switchgears, it doesn't do you any good. So it has to be company specific. And no matter where you go, no matter what job you ever had, no matter when you go to another company, you're going to have some sort of training all over again because every company does things differently. So there's always going to be more training on there, but they should be able to get a job anywhere in the country as machinists. And with the curriculum, if you're using the NTU, the National Tooling Machining Association curriculum, or any of the ATC's curriculums, or Salt Lake Community College, that is a standardized curriculum because they've already had it validated.
Hypothetically, if it's purely a Swiss screw shop, will that individual come out and have no experience?
It depends on whether you do mill in your shop. If they're gonna be a machinist, there has to be somewhere where it's touched on. When he was looking at those requirements on the minimum requirements for the on-the-job training, 2,000 hours, we typically put in approximate hours. If you're not doing it, somewhere along the line, whoever the mentor is could touch on there, and maybe only 100 hours on milling if you don't do it. Maybe 50 hours on milling if you don't do it. But they should at least understand it. And part of the requirements with going to school, they will touch on the milling because they're going to get the classroom on it. So.
I would, give me just a minute, please. I would also argue that, regardless of what your specialty is, even a screw machines are still working with milling tools and drills and multiple work holding methods and things like that. So there's still a lot of incorporation that hopefully I can help you with, as well as some of my resources can help you to make sure that you're determining, skills that although you're using them specifically on a screw machine today, could be applied to somebody who maybe is an all-milling center, in the future. But at the same time, we're hoping to build the skills sets of our employees, correct? So, we want to build a program that supports us and builds the loyalty within our companies to do the things that we want to do. So,
what's the commitment level between the employer and the apprentice? So you get somebody in, you started them in the program, and they're just not working out. How does that relationship end, and what commitment level is there?
Once an apprentice actually signs, there's an apprenticeship agreement that's actually set up through our database system. Once the apprentice is entered in there, you can actually print out the agreement. The apprentice signs it, and you as the company, whoever this person that's in charge of the company signs it. So there's an agreement, and it sets forth what's inside the standards. If they're not meeting the requirements, then you have to follow whatever, there's a complaint procedure that's listed in there, but you follow whatever your company procedure is for getting rid of them. You don't have to necessarily get rid of them from your company, but you can drop them from the apprenticeship program. Even though you may have a probationary period for your company, every apprenticeship program also has a probationary period. It can't be more than 25%. So for an 8,000 hour program, you can have a 2,000 hour probationary period. During that time, there is no without cause, you can cancel an apprentice during that time. After the 2,000 hours of their probationary period, then there has to be a procedure of why you cancel them from the program. And it could be just as much as your company policies and procedures. If you have the normal procedure of the verbal, the written, and the 3 strikes, you're out, that could be as far as put in there. We don't necessarily put that in the standards, it would be in like a policy. But you just have to make sure you do everything, under EEOC guidelines. the same procedures you would normally do for any of your employees. You just have to make sure you're not doing it. If you do it this way for one person and you do it this way for another way, then you're not actually causing a problem there because you're doing it two different ways. So you set up the procedures and it's no different. If there's probationary period, you cancel them. But you don't necessarily have to, again, not every one of your employees has to be in the apprenticeship program. So if you like the person but they're not a good apprentice, you can still keep them as your employee, they just won't be in your apprenticeship program.
And conversely, if they're not working out as an employee, you don't have to keep them because of the apprenticeship. So we've never run into anything where the apprenticeship has caused us any challenge with, disciplining or terminating an employee.
Even though it's under federal guidelines?
We're under federal guidelines, but we still have to follow the federal laws, and you would have to follow, which is EEOC, which is our sister agency. So it's anti-discrimination. So if you have a company policy on what your disciplinary program is, the apprentices have to follow that program too.
Paul was talking about if you were to take someone who still is your employee and take them out of the apprenticeship. But the other side of that is, if you have to deal with an issue with an employee, it turns out termination. There's no cause given by virtue of the fact that they're in attendance.
So Matt, just as an endorsement, Brendel Manufacturing, we've interviewed hundreds of machines applicants over the years, right? And not once has any one of them ever asked if we've had an apprenticeship program. I don't think it's necessarily that they see that as a good or bad thing or an incentive thing. I think they just don't know. So for building this manufacturing and bringing that back to a great vocation and profession, this is critical. And I see great value in it, that we get out there to these high school and college age students to bring them into a program like this. And if you think of all the number of high schools we have across northern Utah, we're not looking for hundreds at every school, right? We're just looking for the few who have interest. So that's why I think with Helen helping us on this. The other applicant we reviewed, Matt, remember, for to do what Helen's going to do, she had her apprentice manual from Parker. And it was the most impressive thing I've ever seen. And she was proud of it, she was excited, and she was committed to loyal to the company because of that. So I see great value in building loyalty in employees.
Yeah, it's really true. And our hope is that, we build, or help, as a group, unitedly, we build this program that is so strong, it gains the attention by the public, that they say, this is a united group of employers that are doing some great things. And I may be going out on a limb, we talked about the grant money. This is serious. I mean, there's $80,000, $90,000 that's going to be used strictly on marketing. And that should go a long ways to have a lot of people understand what's going on here. And if you're participating in the program, you're going to benefit and have the opportunity to tap into that pipeline.
And may I add also, this is not a one-time event. So we plan to reapply for this grant next year as well.
Hopefully, there's no guarantee, but it's a possibility.
So what are the requirements for the mentor?
For a mentor?
Do they have to have a journal?
The requirements that I'm aware of is that they have to be journeyman, but there's got to be some, well, I'm actually going to lean to Bob here a little bit, because there's got to be some availability for a skilled person to mentor an apprentice.
Obviously, I don't know machining, and nobody in my office here at Salt Lake determines who is the journey worker or the mentor. You as the employer are the ones who determine who the mentor is. You know who your workers are, and you know who are skilled. So you are the ones who determine who those mentors are.
Even if they don't have a journeyman?
Even if they don't have one. If you decide that they are a mentor and they are at journey worker level, you're the expert. You're the subject matter expert. I'm not. So I can't determine that. So that would be completely up to the individual companies. But that's part of where that grandfather can come in too, and so you can actually get those mentors and get in the program. They don't need to.
A lot of our mentors are not journey work machines.
Can one person mentor many people, or?
It depends. That'll take It'll have to be in your documentation. There's a section in there on ratios. So if you set up a ratio, and then you go out of that ratio, then you're actually in violation of your standards.
That is for you to determine and put it together.
Is there any issue with making, say, a new employee who's in the journeyman program, their completion contingent with their retained employment? Like, I think you will stay, assuming you do successfully complete the journeyman program, or this program. Is there an issue?
I would say I've never seen it. I've heard of people trying to do it, but you got to make sure that if you're going to do something like that, that there's all kinds of other employment laws, and that you don't break any unemployment laws. I will say that the national statistics for apprenticeship programs, that they say 95% of all apprentices come from the Department of Labor, Bureau of Statistics. 95 of apprentices stay for the company that they work for because they've seen that the company actually put in an effort to actually train.
I guess maybe I wouldn't have understood. If that their continued employment is contingent on them successfully completing the program, or at that point, that could be a point of, you were hired to complete this program, you were not successful, you can only...
Well, that's part of the apprenticeship program. That's part of whatever you determine as an employer for how you hire your employees.
Okay.
Just because they don't complete the apprenticeship program doesn't mean you have to get rid of them as an employee.
Okay, but
it can actually,
okay,
if they get canceled from the apprenticeship program, it can terminate their employment.
okay,
Because apprenticeship is an on-the-job training program, so
Okay.
since you're actually working while you're and learning while you get paid, it is a program. You're actually an employee.
thank you.
It's a condition of employment.
It would be almost like an employment contract that you can develop. And just on that same line, we talked about this early on about, okay, you put cash into the cost of training at an ATC or Salt Lake Community College. Paul touched on NTMA. It's a totally online training program that your employees would never have to leave your company, and they would fulfill all the requirements for an apprenticeship. Personally, we have that option if we choose to go with the Ogden Weaver Tech College because the quality of and not that NTMA isn't high quality, but we like to have them work on their machines and the instructions right there. It's great, but that is an option. But with that, the NTMA labor attorney that's available with the membership can help you to write an education contract that would allow you to say you need to work at my company for so many hours, or if you leave prior to that, we prorate the amount of money that we've got invested into you in classroom training. So that's a resource that's available as well. Good questions.
Who will see you get started?
It would be great if you could express your interest. If you could get with Helen and say I'm in, and we can get an invoice out to you or get more information. If you need some time to think about it, again, this whole presentation will be, a link will be emailed to you if you need to run it up the flagpole in the companies. But anyway, we hope you'll join us. We think the synergy of a lot of employers working on this together is only going to benefit the collective pretty soon.
And I know the kickoff they want to get going for the spring. If you want to get started earlier, if you contact Helen and Travis, we can get together and we can get you started before the spring.